Shalom, this is number 2 of my videos on Tsniyute, on Jewish modesty. Avi, who is one of the main people behind a wonderful blog called JewsByChoice.org for Jews by choice who are very serious about wanting to live Jewish lives but aren't Orthodox, asked for a follow-up on the previous video he asked for about modesty and Tsniyute. So the general question he asked were, what is the ideal practice for Tsniyute? What should be the appropriate dress for synagogue? What about children? What about public displays of affection? Are there differences for men and women? And what about tattooing and piercing? Well, I think that the general policy, of course, the Orthodox I explained in video 1, are getting more and more traditional. I just posted an article on my blog for this date, January 14th, 2008, about how more and more Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox in Israel, are forcing buses to be separate seating, and that the publicly acceptable Orthodox dress has gotten longer sleeves and longer hems over the past 20, 30 years when you compare them to photos of rabbis' wives, for example, from that time. That there's more and more fanaticism in that area, just like you find in the Muslim world. We're not quite there yet, but it's getting more and more. Now, what about non-Orthodox Jews and Jews who want to follow the general views of Judaism that you should be modest? Well, the key is what is appropriate for the occasion. Clearly, a pool or a lake has different dress requirements than does a shul or a school or a business meeting. I also addressed, and I asked the Rabbi 9 the question about somebody who does bodybuilding and the question of tzniut for him. Now, the question you have to ask yourself in all of these situations is my dress appropriate for the place? And what is the purpose of the way I'm dressed? Is it to titillate other people? Is it designed to be sexually provocative? Or am I just trying to look nice and modest and hamish and chen, graceful? Is there a tam, a good taste to what I'm wearing? And obviously, when you take a look at the way people are dressed, you can tell whether they're purposely designed to attract lascivious attention of the opposite sex, or they're designed to have tam and chen and to look decent. That's basically the criterion that people should use when they're being reflective about what they're going to wear. Tight-fitting clothing and low-cut, very short dresses and low-cut tops, and obviously what is the purpose of that? For most people, when they're dressing that way, that's what you have to think about. I wouldn't have a strict rule that sleeves have to be such and such a length, or skirts have to be such and such a length, but it's a question of the general way in which you look and what is the purpose of the way you're dressing. Now, in terms of shul, there's several questions here. We have a big debate in our shul. There's some women who say, I don't care, I still don't think it's right for women to go on this bima and pants. There's no real distinction in my mind that way. The rule is about women in skirts. The Orthodox observe. First, they think, as I explained in my other video, that the Torah prohibition about wearing clothing of the opposite sex applies to pants. But that was in an age where pants weren't made for women. There are specific pants for women today. And the whole society culture has changed where you see skirts less and less and less, and pants more and more and more. So you can have a very fine pantsuit that a woman wears that's perfectly matim, appropriate. Non-Orthodox Jews don't pay attention really to that notion that women can't wear pants at all. When you see Orthodox women working out in my health club, they're usually wearing a skirt over their pants. Well, we don't necessarily have to abide by that. So I don't have any problem with women wearing pants to shul. I think the larger question is, how nice do people look? Used to be that people would wear their Sunday best to go to church, and now they're wearing their Sunday worst. That people want to be comfortable in a lot of places. And that's happening more and more in shul. Well, I don't personally believe in that. I think out of respect for the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, if you're going to see the King of Kings, you should dress nicely. One of the few sentences I remember from high school Latin is, vestis verum reddit, clothes make the man. When you dress nicely, you take the thing more seriously. I know people dress up all week to go to work. They want to relax when they're in shul, and you can relax, but and maybe that doesn't mean women need to wear things that are cumbersome and bothersome, like nylons or whatever. But at the same time, people, I think, should look nice. Doesn't necessarily mean a business suit or a formal dress. I'm in a dress, but definitely people going to shul should look nice. Somebody asked me about sandals. Well, depends where you are. Obviously in Israel, the culture is sandals without socks, and If that's appropriate for the occasion, it doesn't seem to be anything wrong with that. Now, for children's tzniyut, again, I'd say the same principles apply. I'm not sure what the real question is about children, other than they should be dressed in modest ways and should look nice. It's been a long. My kids are now all over 20, so don't really remember what the issues are there, but I think you just use your sense. In terms of hand-holding and kissing, the pastoral letter on relations between the sexes by the Rabbinical Assembly, conservative rabbis, don't forbid touching, like the laws of Negiah for the Orthodox. And I'll do a video on the mikvah and the whole rule about menstruation at some point, but we don't have that specific rule in Judaism, that you can't touch somebody from the opposite sex. But clearly there's something that's designed for private relations and something for the public. So if it's a simple question of affection, like holding hands or a gentle peck on the cheek, that's one thing. But if it gets beyond that to something that belongs in a room, and people know where that line is, belongs in a room and not in a hall in a high school or someplace else in the public. Are there differences for men and women? Well, I hate to get into this because people consider it to be sexist, but is it appropriate? I think the same question has to be asked. What is the purpose of the dress, and is it being comfortable, and at the same time not being for the purposes of inducing titillation or lascivious thoughts? Finally, I do have a video on his last question about tattooing and piercing. Again, as I mentioned there, I mentioned briefly here, the basic question there in the Bible was that Canaanite priests tattooed and pierced for idolatrous purposes. And we really don't worry about Canaanite priests tattooing and piercing today. But we still have a general sense that people shouldn't tattoo the body to defame the body, defile the body. Piercing is a different question because there's clearly societal things. I mean, the men in the Torah, in the Exodus 32 story about the golden calf, were wearing earrings. So there's a question of what society considers appropriate. And today, women wearing pierced ears is considered appropriate. And, you see more and more men with it, and, I don't find that particularly attractive, but, or something that, I would want to do, but, if a guy wants to do it, it doesn't seem to be totally out of bounds today. But clearly there are certain things that are designed purely to be offensive or to be startling. And the Rabbinical Assembly, in its tshuva, its paper on this question, said, basically, you follow the societal norms. So in India, where an earring through the nose, a nose ring might be okay. Here it's really not okay unless you're a Hindu. And certainly not to pierce parts of the body that wouldn't be shown in public. Anyway, so I think, again, for halacha l'maaseh, purposeful, active behavior for a serious Jew who wants to follow Jewish tradition but isn't Orthodox, where we don't need to sit on separate buses and we don't need to refrain even shaking hands with somebody from the opposite sex, using your general seichel, your intelligence, to ask yourself, why am I wearing this? What is the purpose here? Am I trying to look nice and modest, or am I trying to arouse desire in the opposite sex, is the main question. And if it's appropriate for the occasion, beach wear for the beach, but there's a difference between a modest bathing suit and a Speedo. There's different clothing you need on the basketball court than you need at work. Use your sense, and you'll come up with an appropriate standard that's reasonable, remembering that the goal is modesty and to look presentable and to honor God in that way.